Paul for President sign in my front yard. I introduce Dr. Paul.
But it looks like we're going to do just fine. But I do appreciate you coming out. You know, it is wonderful. You know, the campaign is getting near the end, but the revolution has only really begun. So there's still plenty of work to do, but it has been a very, very exciting year, and I have been enlightened because I have found so many people that I didn't know exist. None of us knew how many there were out there.
Yeah.
Whether it was the remnant, those who were the true believers and understood this and been waiting around, or how did we ever know that the young people would respond so well and be willing to listen to the message that we will offer you liberty and no handouts. Of course, when you have liberty and no handouts, you don't have to worry about being taken care of because you get to take care of yourself. Because first off, you don't have the government taking anything from you. You don't have an income tax. Which means if you learn to distrust what the government promises us and what the politicians say that they're going to take care of us from cradle to grave, and you know there's nothing left in the Social Security, if you know you can save for your own future, all of a sudden getting out of Social Security sounds pretty good as well. But the year has been fantastic. The numbers of people that have joined have been really impressive. And I, for one, am much more optimistic now than I was a year ago. And this, to me, is only the beginning. And I've come to the conclusion, one of the reasons why this has happened, it has become readily apparent of the inadequacies of what our politicians tell us and what our government promises, and the people are realizing that, you know, it just isn't so. When they tell us they can take care of us and bail out everybody all the time, and if you come up short, they print money and send you a $600 check and say everything is going to be okay. You know, I'm convinced when those checks went out, that probably within a week, all that money was consumed by the rising price of gasoline in 1 week. It was probably wasted out the window. And besides, where did they get the money? They printed the money. They didn't have any. Can't tax the people anymore. The people are overtaxed. You can't borrow anymore because they're tired of loaning us the money. So they just resort to printing money. And, you know, they always complain to me in Washington and over the years, why do you always talk about the monetary issue? And why are you such a stickler for the Constitution dealing with the money issue? They said the money issue is too complicated. People can't understand it. And I would say, well, if it's complicated, if the issue is whether it's complicated, if you take a piece of paper and you write a 1 on it, it becomes $1. If you put a 0 on it, it's $10. You put 2 zeros, it's worth $100. And then if you do that too often, the money becomes worthless. And they say, well, that's too complicated. Nobody can understand that. But they can, and they should understand the Constitution. Our problem is they don't read it, so it doesn't matter much. The Constitution is very clear on the monetary policy. It says only gold and silver can be legal tender. And you can't have a central bank, which means when we have our free society, we will not have a Federal Reserve system. Arrangement between the banks and the government and Wall Street, where they get to create the money and benefit and circulate the money until we have to spend it, and then all we get are the higher prices. And this is the most important issue that people have to understand, because when prices go up, whether it's the price of medical care or the cost of education or cost of energy, there's always some scapegoat. You know, it's the OPEC nations, it's the oil companies, it's the unions, it's somebody else. But when prices go up across the board in these certain areas like this, That means the dollar is going down in value. They don't want you to think about excessive government spending and the Federal Reserve that accommodates the politicians by printing money. It's no more complicated than that. And, of course, this gives the opportunity for government to grow without being responsible. It allows government to intrude on our liberties by proposing all these programs at home, pretending to do good. But one of the worst aspects of inflation, and this has been known for thousands of years, governments have done it. When they go and they fight these unnecessary, stupid wars around the world, they always resort to inflation. This is the reason the monetary issue is connected to our foreign policy. And one major step we can take is let's take the pressure off the Federal Reserve to print money and monetize debt by changing our foreign policy and bringing our troops home. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913. We had an inflation for World War I. We had inflation in the 20s and a deflation in the 30s. Inflation for World War II. Inflation for the Korean War. They always resort to inflation. But ancient nations did it before. They either stole the gold from the people, or they clipped coins, or they diluted the metal. But it was always inflationary. Today it's much more sophisticated because they can create billions of dollars with the click of a switch on a computer, and they're doing that endlessly. Every problem that comes up in Washington today, whether it's sending out extra checks or bailing out some Wall Street firm like Bear Stearns, they just create new money out of thin air and passing on the problems to the people. And something big is happening in this country in two ways. One, it's happening big because we're moving into a very, very serious economic crisis, an attack on our personal liberty. But the neat part about the whole thing is the American people are waking up and they're saying we're tired of it all and we want to change it and we want to put our country back on the right track once again. Talking about foreign policy is that we can cut spending without attacking some of the programs here at home that people have become dependent on. They're not technically the things that we should have done. We've overextended ourselves. We pretend we take care of the elderly, but we really don't. At the same time, we have a responsibility to take care of our veterans, and we really don't do a very good job there. So what do? We crimp on some of these programs, but I don't think we have to attack those programs because we have so much of a margin to deal with overseas expenditures. That should be where the American people come together and say, look, it's time we change our way. We're spending $1 trillion a year maintaining an empire that we have no right to maintain around the world. We have troops in 130 countries. We have 700 military bases, and we try to tell the world and the Iraqis, oh, we're not over there for the oil, and we're just here to make you a democracy, and then we're going to leave. By building an embassy, the biggest in the world, and building 14 military bases on their land, just offending them and their religious values, and we're there to do good. That's like the people here at home that want to regulate your social life and say, we're doing it for your sake because we want you to be a better person, and we're going to tell you what you can eat, drink, and smoke because we know what's best for you. That whole idea is wrong. It's un-American. It violates the principles of freedom, and we have to restore and understand the true nature of what a free society is all about. That means you own your life, you own your liberty, and you own your own responsibility what you do with it. By bringing our troops home, first thing is, or the initial thing that would happen is that it would send a message to the world that we would be less aggressive. We wouldn't be threatening people. We wouldn't be proposing the next country we're going to bomb. Probably the most serious threat to our country today, economically and with our personal liberties, is the fact that there's a bunch of them in Washington right now in